Hello, SKFL. Welcome back. 2021. The Rockford Report is here. Did you miss me? I've missed you. Well, today we've got Casey Tager on to talk about a plethora of things, Watson and Wilson, upcoming potential rule changes, and then just a little chitter chatter about kind of what's going on in the NFL. This will be available on YouTube, and we're going to get back onto iTunes for those who prefer to listen to it in the car. Hope you enjoy. And if you have any ideas for future pods, just let me know. Would love to have all of you on at some point here in the offseason. Enjoy. Well, we're back, Casey. 2021 is here, and so is the pod. Excited to be here?
It's great to be back, man. We took a 2-month little break, playoff football and some stuff. I think the last time I saw you face-to-face, CeeDee Lamb was scoring a touchdown on an end around to win AJ the SKFL title. So
good
to see you again. I know we talk all the time through text messages, but it's always good to see your face, Rob.
Yeah, it's good. I'm sure Jeff has fond memories of that, and certainly AJ certainly does as well. And since we last done a pod, all hell has broken loose here in Seattle. Wilson has not demanded a trade, but there's certainly a rift there, and the national media went wild with it, which has now brought it back to Seattle. And yesterday gave 4 teams they'd be willing to get traded to. So there is absolutely some momentum here. So what do you think's going on with Wilson? Do you think he gets dealt? And if you had to pick a leader in the clubhouse where he might get dealt to, what do you think would make the most sense, not only for the Seahawks, but for that other team?
You know, I mean, every offseason there's some smoke with some of these guys. And, you know, locally it was a topic right after the Super Bowl. I think it really started with, you know, Mahomes running for his life. And I think Wilson kind of casually said something like, you know, that's what I've had to deal with in Seattle my entire career. But, you know, it never really went away, but it wasn't a huge topic. When Schefter tweets something out, it's national. I mean, it was the number one thing on PTI. Kornheiser, Wilbon were talking about it yesterday. So when it gets to that point, I mean, we're beyond smoke. I mean, we got flames right now. And, you know, I'm 50-50. If you would have asked me a couple days ago, I would have said it's under 5% that he gets dealt. I think there's a shot it happens now. And it's a big name player like that takes a lot of things. You're not going to just trade him like Stafford. I think you knew Stafford was going to get dealt. But with Wilson, I don't know. I mean, it's locally here, the fans have turned on him. I mean, there's always the drama, the high maintenance, the Sierra factor with him. You either love him or you hate him. I think, you know, a year ago, I would have thought he'd had keys to the city, you know, street named after him, stadium named after him. He's still got that, you know, ownership with the Sounders. So he's kind of tied to Seattle more than you remember. But man, I think it happens. I mean, right now, gun to head, twist my arm. If I think he gets dealt, I think he does. And a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, I would have said, no.
Hi, Angel.
Hi, sorry.
I would have said, yeah, I mean, right now, I think a poll was posted on KJR that had 47% of the fans willing to deal him. And that would have never been the case. I mean, people now have completely sided with the organization. The 12s have sided with Pete Carroll over Russell Wilson. And I didn't think that was going to be the case for a guy that, you know, brought us the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I'm on record of the text messages. I don't think he's getting dealt. I don't think Watson's getting dealt. But, you know, it's certainly trending in that direction. Now, what would you want for Wilson? At what point do you say, okay, we're trading Wilson, that sucks. We'll probably take a step back, but we're getting so much in return that, okay, we got to do it now. I mean, what's that price for you?
Yeah, I mean, you start hearing about the Watson deal, and we can talk about Watson too, but, you know, they're throwing out 3, 4, 5 first-round picks, and that's very, you know, for a team, we've always talked about it, you know, a team that has a young rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, it allows you to go and get 2 studs in free agency. So you save the 35, 40 million on Wilson, and you can get a top, you know, level defender and a top level running back or receiver, or an offensive line, because it sounds like this is all stemming from offensive line issues. So I know that's where we've got to go with it. But, you know, you trade Wilson to anybody, that team becomes a 10 or 11 win team. They get to the playoffs in the 20s. And when you think about the Seahawks draft history, we've been horrible at picking in the 20s. So to me, if you're going to trade Wilson, you got to get a plethora of picks, but you have to get back in that some sort of plan with what you're doing at quarterback. It's definitely not Geno Smith. And to me, that's what shocks me with the teams that Schefter named yesterday. None of them bring that quarterback back. I think when we were speculating on it a couple weeks ago, it was, Jets or the Dolphins, because you get a top 2, top 3 pick.
Right.
Maybe they love one of those rookies, but with that pick, maybe you get Tua back. Maybe you get Sam Darnold back. And at least that short-term answers what you're going to do at quarterback. The teams that he named yesterday, the Bears, you're not getting one of their quarterbacks and feeling good. The Saints, unless Winston's part of it. The Cowboys, unless Dak somehow is part of it. But I feel like we're in this position where we're trying to get a younger, cheaper quarterback, which then kind of rules out Dak. It's a bizarre situation with a 70-year-old coach. Pete Carroll, I don't think wants to go to rebuild. He wants to run the football, but you need a quarterback. Seahawks have been just, lucky for the last decade that we've had this quarterback that gets you in the playoffs every year. He gets you 10 wins. And
if you don't have the quarterback, you better have a fucking A-grade defense, which I don't think they have right now, neither do you. So they got to do something.
Yeah, our secondary's in shambles. What's Jamal Adams thinking right now? He comes to Seattle thinking he's going to play with Russell Wilson for the rest of his career, and in year 1, Wilson's out. I said earlier that gun to head, I would say Wilson gets dealt, but in that same breath, if it got announced that he was traded, I'd be shocked. I would. It would be one of those that would be that punch to the gut shocker. I kind of want to just take that side of, I think he's going to get dealt, because when Schefter starts talking about something, it happens more often than it doesn't.
True. Okay, and before we move in, we're going to really talk about the rules today and some of those polls we had up and kind of what we think might go into next year. And we'll come back to Wilson at the end, and part of our pop potpourri section. I'll ask you a question about who you think the Seahawks quarterback will be next year. I don't think Watson's getting traded either, even though I think you're very strong that he will. Where's your gut say? Where do you think he goes? Do they trade him within the conference? They give him to the Jets. They give him to the Dolphins, who have the picks and the collateral to make that deal, or they try to hold on to him, hold him on for ransom.
Yeah, a month ago, I thought Watson was dealt 95%. I would have bet the house on him getting dealt. It's quiet now. Texans are playing hardball, but they should play hardball. There's some weird stuff where it actually makes sense to trade him after June. But if you're the Texans, don't you want the draft pick this year? So I don't know. To me, I think it's those same 2 teams I mentioned with Wilson. I think the Jets and the Dolphins hold all the cards. At that 2 and 3 pick, you dangle that, you can get a Watson, you can get a Wilson. And I think that's where it starts. You've got these other teams like Carolina and San Fran, and I don't think they trade him in division, but I don't think they're hesitant to trade him in conference. There's just so many good quarterbacks in the AFC that, what's keeping Watson in there, and he might be a block to the Super Bowl. But Texans are definitely the team in rebuild mode, so they don't even necessarily need the draft pick. The quarterback back like the Seahawks. See, I think the Seahawks still want to win now, so they need a quarterback out there. I think if the Texans make this move, they're tanking for next year. They're looking for a top pick in 2022 to get their quarterback. They'll run me or you out there at quarterback for a year and be good with it. They just want as many draft picks as they can get, maybe a player or 2 that's NFL ready that can start for them. But them, I think they don't care about the quarterback. It's going to take a lot. I don't think that thing gets done as quickly as some others do. I think they play hardball with Watson a little bit. And I don't know where Watson's at. I don't know if he's willing to sit out and cost himself some money really to get out of that organization.
Yeah, we'll see. He definitely holds a lot of cards, just being the player he is. But more on that when we kind of wrap up today. But let's look at the rules now. There's been a lot of discussion about potential rule changes led by a lot of different of the owners. And to our credit, we took a look at a lot of these. So what I wanted to do today, obviously we're not making any decisions on this today, but we've been talking about, okay, when we want to make some decisions. So I'll let you talk about some of the things you and Ian maybe have been chatting about, and really just kind of look at some of these issues. And we'll focus on the big ones, but I want to start kind of at the bottom here. Future of the kicker. We had 11 votes in. The leader was replace the kicker with a second tight end, which, I would sign up for that. Tell us about this one, where you think it might go.
Yeah, It's funny too, I think we put this ultimatum down last year to get Yusuf in. He was kind of like, you know what, I'm not coming back. I'm opting out unless we guarantee some changes. I think we kind of quietly threw out a date of like, okay, we'll have some stuff in place by, October 1 about what we're thinking vision-wise, and we never really held to that. November is when we kind of just threw these out there. So it's a topic. I think it's about time. I think most people are willing. You can kind of tell by these polls. So we have to look at it two ways. There's a lot of stuff that can go into effect immediately. I mean, something like the future of the kicker and defense, that's going into effect for next year. Anything that is like keeper value changing, the amount that you have to give a full offseason, you have to give a full season of knowledge with that. There's no way we're looking at changing keepers or how keepers are run and having that go into effect for this year. You'd have to give every owner the full season ability to draft, make trades. Just wouldn't be fair. So we'll go to those one by one. Future of the kicker. I mean, right now, I don't think we're having a kicker next year. I mean, I think it's probably 100% that the kicker is going to be gone. I think that's just the way of football now. You look at all the daily stuff. Nobody's playing with kickers. It's been a talk for a while. It's now, I think it comes really down to, do we replace it or do we just eliminate it altogether? And, it's going to come to a vote. I think just throwing this out there to everybody. I think what we're thinking is, maybe end of April, right around draft weekend of the NFL, when everybody's kind of in football mode, we set something up where we've got an official vote on a lot of this stuff, or if not all of it. So I think right now, me and Rob are, we're going to play devil's advocate, talk about each side of it. I'd be fine with replacing it. I'll admit I had voted for, replacing it with a tight end. And it changes some things. I mean, right now on the surface, it's, everybody replaces it with a tight end that's low end, that's only getting you 5 to 10 points. But what it does is it increases the value of those stud tight ends. I mean, the people that have Kelsey, the people that have Waller love it, because now you're starting two of these guys. I mean, think of if you had Kelsey and Waller as your two tight ends that you're starting, and you're going against, somebody that's starting an Akins and a Blake Jarwin or something, you could be up 40, 50 points. It has the potential of being like that defensive swing where you're outscoring people on the tight end position by, 40, 50 points, which I don't think that's what we want. That's not the intent with this. I think when we thought about it last year, it was more, okay, look at all these low end tight ends that are, essentially scoring 8 points, 10 points. Well, that's what a kicker scores. We have fun tracking some of these high upside tight ends. It's what we do because a lot of people are chasing tight ends unless you have one of the big three. So I think that's what we have to consider right now. Are you willing to roll the dice that somebody, has two monster tight ends and you're chasing tight end versus, everybody's in the same boat. Tight end is going to move up in terms of value. It's going to put them, with the stud receivers. I mean, Kelsey and Waller and Kittle, those guys are up there with Devontae Adams now at this point, if you're starting two of them. So I think that's what we have to look at and consider. But I think right now, if I was voting, I'd have fun with it, and I would try the second tight end thing, just because I still think after the big 5 or 6, all those tight ends are kind of just a drop in the bucket. And they're all, they might score you 25 or 30, but for the most part, they're scoring you 8 to 15, which is a kicker. And I'd have fun kind of going deeper on my board and charting and, researching on tight ends and which defenses give up more yards to tight ends. I think it just adds another element. But I think that's it. There's no other position I think you could really replace it with other than a second tight end. So I think it's eliminate kicker altogether or replace it with the tight end.
Yeah, I'm not going to play devil's advocate. You kind of played the devil's advocate position because you're right. I mean, I could keep Kelsey and then take, let's say, Hunter Henry signed with San Diego, was with Herbert. You take him in the 4th round as a flyer and he blows up. Then you're in a pull position. But I probably wouldn't end up doing that because you're losing value at receiver or somewhere else if you end up doing that too. So I like it. I would vote for it. If it, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out, we can always replace it the next year. The one that's probably been the most talked about aside from keepers is the defense. Now, we had 11 votes. 8 of them voted to replace the defense. 5 of those 8 would have replaced it with another starting flex, which I probably voted for, if I remember correctly. So it looks like defense is going away. The only thing I don't like about this is there is some strategery with the defense. The thing, and then so maybe we would change the point so it's not so much out of whack. But I intentionally took the Ravens where I took them last year because I knew that would be, a position of strength for me versus keeping, picking maybe a young wide receiver there, which may have value down the road. So there's some give and take there. But, that being said, I would probably vote to eliminate it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what? I've always been an advocate of keeping the defense, and a lot of it is just it's part of the history of the SKFL. Sometimes you're talking to a buddy and you're like going in on, you're up like 10 or 12 and you're playing against a defense. You're talking to somebody that doesn't know SKFL and they're like, "Oh, you're up 12 against the defense? You're fine." And I'm like, no, our league, we start with 40 at the defense. And so it's just, there has been too much kind of pushback on the defense over the years. We've talked about changing it. We've talked about tweaking points. We've never really figured out how to do it. It's fun because it always is that game changer. But fantasy football is not about the defense. We care about when we're watching the red zone. It's just hard to track. You don't even really know what you're rooting for. Defense, to me, we've never changed it. The yardage difference breaks with the way football's changed over the last 15 years. I mean, the scoring is still based on 2005. People are throwing 80% of the time now. So the yardage is just irrelevant with the way it's set up. So how do you fix it? Then you've got that situation where a defense can be dominant for 3.5 quarters, give up 1 or 2 cheap touchdowns late, and all of a sudden you go from a 50 to a 12, and that doesn't make sense because the game's out of hand. It's just way too much of a crapshoot for me. And I mean, going back to the SKFL championship game, Jeffrey had 3 defenses on his team. He started the wrong one. If he starts the other 2, he wins. Yeah. And it's just, he has the ability. Yeah, that's knowledge, but it's not really fantasy. And the same way as the kicker, you look at daily stuff, nobody's really playing with defense on daily. It's all the skill position guys. It's the yardage stuff. And it's just, I think it's time for it to go. Jeffrey always talks about just kind of changing the yardage, maybe getting rid of yardage altogether and just leaving it at points, and maybe upping the interceptions and the sacks a little bit. But I think the easy way to do it is just get rid of it. League is talking about replacing it or eliminating it altogether. So I think that's where the vote will lean. The question now is, do you just get rid of it or start another flex? To me, starting another flex is always the easy answer. You're always sitting on a guy on your bench that you feel good about if you own him. So let's just put him in there and have him count as points. We might have to look at roster expansion and maybe adding a position if we're starting an extra person. But also, you don't have teams hoarding 3 defenses. And it might have an instant wash there. We might look at adding 1 roster spot. That I want to look at a little bit more. But I don't mind the fact, Ian 2 years ago got lucky with the Patriots defense, rode them, and it was just a waiver pickup. But then you have that year this year where I've talked to Ian, and it's like, holy shit, I'm spending 2 hours a week trying to figure out what defense I'm going to stream. And half the time it's pointless. And, I think the biggest argument against defense in the SKFL, the way we do it, is you're not even really targeting a good defense. You're not even really giving points to a strong defense. You're targeting the team playing against the bad offense. Right. I'm playing a Texans defense who's bottom 5 because they're playing the Jets. Or in the playoffs, I played the Raiders defense because they were playing the Jets. And it's like, that's not what fantasy should be about. We shouldn't be just targeting these bad offenses. So I think right now I'm with you. I voted for just replacing it with a flex. A lot of that, what that does is, it just keeps the balance scoring. We always talk about, trying to hit 300 in the SKFL.
Yeah, you take out those kind of lifetime legacy records still have some meaning.
Exactly. To me, we're not adding any more intel to anybody right now. You've always got somebody on your bench you're willing to start. I think the only reason you would look at expanding a roster spot is because of bye week situation. There's times where, I can't even start a kicker because I've got too many guys on bye and I don't have anybody I want to drop. And so the defense is always a position, people don't start kickers in the SKFL, but you always start a defense because of that ability to score 40 or 50. And so if all of a sudden you had bye week issues and you didn't have somebody you could plug in there, that would be the one reason. I would actually lean towards adding 1 roster spot to the team if we were going to replace defense with a flex.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. Okay, next, so this is probably a quickie one. Looks like decimal scoring will pass. And so every yard matters. We'll get rid of some of those pesky ties, although we can still have a tie, of course, but it'll just be less and less frequent from there.
Yeah.
So that'll be implemented, which is I'm fine with. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I voted against it just to keep it as is, but I told myself I was going to be fine with it. So, I mean, if I flip my vote up, we're talking 8 people for it. Most leagues are doing it with decimal. So it's always fun to just kind of watch a guy and say, okay, if he gets 3 yards, I'm not getting a point. If he gets 4 yards, I am getting a point in real time. But it's still a 3-yard run. And why aren't you getting credit for that 3-yard run? So in all honesty, I mean, the decimal scoring makes a ton of sense.
Now, we did the expansion vote, and it was a dead heat, 5-5. And there, I don't remember what I voted for because I could see myself voting for either side of that. I think my vote would probably be to expand, but again, it really could play it either way. I like the 12 that we have now. I thought we had probably our strongest year as a league altogether this year with the engagement of everybody and just kind of the way it all played out. So I'm not necessarily pushing to add more, but if it was the right to, I would sign off on it.
And that's exactly where I am. I mean, that's the asterisk right here is if we guarantee the right to, and we can start talking about the right to, it would even be hard to take somebody's word on the right person. We, haven't played with them before. So the right to me are people with some SKFL history, like an Aaron Olson, a Les, something like that would really, I mean, if you told me right now you get Olson and Les back, I think 14, I'd vote for it in a heartbeat. You know what they're going to bring. You know that they understand the league and what it takes. But I agree. If you just said, oh, I got a buddy that, has played fantasy football for 10 years, he'd be good. We got lucky with Blake last year. He fit in like a glove. And so I guarantee that. We've tried that before with some people, and it hasn't worked out. So I agree. I mean, really, there's 2 reasons to expand to 14. One of them is you get 2 more teams. It's better competition. You get, rosters get depleted a little bit in terms of overall talent. And there's more money in the pot. I mean, that's one. But then number 2 is it evens up the schedule to where now you only play everybody once. You get a double header. So those have to be considered because some people love the double header. I mean, I don't hate it. But now if you go to 14, you're not playing a double header because you got 13 opponents. You just play everybody once. It gets rid of divisions to an extent, but what you can do is you go just 2 conferences of 7. So there's some realignment that comes into play with 14. So 14's a bigger topic. I don't think we're there yet. We just don't have the right people. And it implements a lot of other things after the fact if we get to 14 that we have to consider. The other piece of a lot of this right now that is still uncertain, the NFL schedule going to 17 games next year.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, that's a huge topic that needs to get figured out. Okay, what are we doing with the schedule? When do playoffs start? All of that stuff needs to come up. I don't know how they're doing bye weeks now. So we'll have to see how the NFL plays out their schedule there. But I'm with you. I would love to go to 14. I'd love to bring 2 extra people in here. But you're right. It's got to be the right 2.
Yeah, I forgot about that schedule piece. That's an interesting part of it because then all of a sudden playoffs and starting week 14. They could be starting week 15. And in a longer season, teams that are good, they're going to be start shutting guys down earlier. Just kind of create some interest. So, yeah, there'll be some stuff we'll have to work through. The next one is the more keepers. Now, this is kind of the use of Sadie amendum. Right now, we have 5 that wanted an extra keeper, 6 that didn't, essentially. Yeah. And so it's
one person who hasn't voted. Right so it's a dead heat right now, really. So this is one that, I mean, we know this won't happen for next year. Right. This would be one we would vote on in April, and it would go into effect after next year, rolling into the 2022 season. There's been times in the SKFL where I've wanted more keepers. I've kind of come back to where I feel like 4 is good. You have to look at this at a bunch of different sides. I mean, the teams that are good right now that have great teams are always going to say, let's get more keepers. The teams that are bad right now are going to say, no, less keepers or keep it at 4. We have the ability to trade, so there's always the ability to get more keepers. But that's it. I mean, you win the SKFL title, you got a good team. Everybody that wins an SKFL title wants to keep their entire roster. What it does that I don't love is it just, it's an extra 12 people out of the draft. And so for me, that hurts it a little bit. I mean, while the draft is watered down, it's not necessarily the 48 best players that are being kept, but it's 25 of the best players and then 13, 14 guys that are, high upside sleeper type guys. So to me, I don't love it. I think 4 is a good number. If you got to more expand, if you expanded to 14, all of a sudden now keeping 5 people is crazy. You're talking about 70 keepers. So to me, I had something on an offset of this where if we were going to go more keepers, to me, now you have to still get into what happens if you have 2 3s? Do they go up? Do they go down? Can you keep ones? I've always said if you were going to have more keepers, 1 or 2 of those keepers had to be a late guy, somebody in the double-digit rounds. Like if you were going to add a 5th keeper right now, I would say the rule would have to be, okay, you can't keep 5 1s. Like right. That's too much shift of balance of the power. I think you'd have to have somebody on your roster that was a 10, 11, or 12, or 17 and keep him that way. But that just gets confusing to track. And I have been a proponent for more keepers, but I think now I'm wavering to the other side.
Okay, well, we'll see. It's definitely one where we'll have to put up to like 4 or 5, and we'll draft that and see what happens. And if it passes, great. If it doesn't, we'll live to fight another day as well. At least Yusuf certainly will. I'm going to skip over the waivers process because that's going to stay as is, and that's a simple one. Multiple first-round keepers. Let's keep it. No, you can't stack the ones. I probably voted for no here. But that's because I don't have a ton of number 1 keepers right now. I've got Kelsey, and that's about it. So that was an easy one for me to vote for. So I was voting for my own self-interest, which I think we do for the most part on this. So you think this one will probably stay as is as well, Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I remember. This is the AJ one. AJ always kind of thinks that if you have 2 1s, you can't keep them because he's always a proponent of moving up a guy. And AJ would never keep a 1. He always likes to keep his, late round guy, so it doesn't really affect him. But he always thinks if you have 2 2s, that guy should move up. It should be a 1 and a 2 instead of a 2 and a 3. So for me, I've always been a guy that says if you want to keep a guy forever, you keep a guy forever. I mean, what this does is it kills Ian. He can't keep Lamar Jackson and Mahomes, which is, that's a gut punch to him because the rules as they've been have been you could keep those guys forever if you want. You're talking about a guy that's had Drew Brees and 1s for, an 8-9 year stretch. And so I've always liked the ability to keep it like NFL. If you want to franchise a guy, if you want to keep him for his entire career, you've got the ability to do it. The flip side argument is it adds talent back into the draft every single year. I mean, if you can only keep 1 first-round keeper, that means only 12 1s at max can get kept. It means you're going to have studs going back into the draft, and it actually probably helps with the parity of the league because bad teams that are having early picks have way more star power that's there. So I kind of like that idea, but I'm at the mindset of like we are treating, our SKFL franchise as our own team that we have complete control over. Why are we limited to who we can keep and who we can't? I think you should be able to keep multiple ones.
Yeah, and I get that side too because you don't want to penalize a team like Ian that's drafted well, smart, made good trades, and now he's going to give up all that collateral he's built up by his smart decision. So I see both sides of it. I like the idea of the more interesting draft. So that's just my personal point of view on that.
Right.
There's no wrong answer there necessarily. Off-season trades, an area where we've had some ups and downs. We've had some doozies, some wazawoozies over the course of the last 15 years. Looks like we're going to do it for maybe a 2 to 3 week stretch right before the season. How do you think that'll be structured? Will that be draft picks for draft picks? Will we be able to trade non-keepers? Will it have to be a keeper? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, that's another part of the topic. This was more about I think we've had some bad trades recently, and I think that's what really hurt. I mean, we went last year because of COVID and all that stuff, kind of the last minute, we weren't allowed to trade. I think the ability to trade like a dynasty league, that's what makes the SKFL. It allows some of the bad teams to get better, allows some of the good deep teams to get better because they can trade some of that stuff that they can't keep, get extra draft picks. I mean, in a perfect world, we figure this thing out where you can do, the upcoming draft picks with players, vice versa, any kind of package you want. And you just got to trust the owners, and hopefully you don't have to police that stuff, because to me, you never want veto shit on a trade. If somebody wants to make a deal, it's just got to be like, you just got to know that everybody understands what the value of a pre-keeper trade means and what that does. If you're trading for a guy that is a one,
that pick too. So it's people don't. I feel like people didn't realize that right away, because if you're a player, now you got to keep them at that draft pick spot. Plus, you're giving up a draft pick.
No, well, it's funny. I mean, when we first started doing it, remember the very beginning, you actually had to keep the guy yourself to trade him. So if I wanted to trade you Kyler Murray, I'd have to keep Kyler Murray, lose my one to trade him to you. So like right off the bat, I'm like, Rob, I need a one and something else back for him. Trades never happened. So now we opened it to where it was like, okay, I can trade him. It's your responsibility to keep Kyler Murray. And we thought it would open it up, and it did. I mean, we've had years where there's, a dozen, 15, 20 preseason trades, which is fun. But, where at first, I think the intent was originally, instead of like the ones and the twos getting dealt, it was more the Ian sitting on Jerick McKinnon as a 12. He's not going to keep him. Let me give him to a team that might just give me a 14 back for free for a guy that I'm not going to keep. And I think that's where we had the most success with some of these trades. It was more those mid-tier, those guys that would be drafted in the 6th, 7th, 8th round, getting dealt for a 14 because they had keeper value in the 12th. Where it really blew up was somebody saying, well, give me this guy that's going to cost me a 1. I'll give you a 5. And then an owner being like, oh shit, now I have to keep him as a 1, 2. And basically I just had to give up so it's that kind of knowledge and making sure, all the owners are aware of that, because I think that's where we've run into issues in the past where, a guy's not going to keep a 1 and he trades him to somebody for a 5. And that guy's just got to realize, okay, you just lost your 5, but you also lost your 1 because you got to keep that guy. So it can work. I mean, it has worked. We've had a lot of these trades that have happened that haven't been an issue. It's just keeping the ones that just feel like, holy shit, Musa just got a third. Yeah, I mean, I think it was 2 years ago where I can't even remember the deal, but Yusuf got a 3rd round pick for essentially nothing. And so it was like, hold on. I mean, does he realize him giving up a 3rd round pick is also going to cost him his first to keep a guy? So yeah, it's more just making sure, talking to the owners and making sure they realize what that trade will entail.
All right, last one. This one has been, kind of been talked about for years, decade even. The keeper down like it's been, you got 2 7s, it's a 7 and an 8, or if it goes up, becomes 2 7s become a 6 and a 7. That one is going to stay as is. Looks like we're just going to, if you got 2 7s, that becomes a 7 and 8. You got 2 1s, it's a 1 and a 2. Yeah, which I think is probably in the best interest, because it gets tricky if you're keeping multiple 1s in that scenario. Basically, says you can't keep multiple 1s, and that's
exactly. It spirals into some other stuff. I mean, what if you have 3 2s, and so even if it moved up to a 2 and a, I mean, then what happens? So I agree. It's what we're used to. It's what everybody knows. I've got no issue with it. Really, the only one that ever thinks that it needs to go up, I think Randy actually was the very first person to bring it up, but AJ's really been somebody that has thought that too. So I wouldn't be surprised if those were the 2 guys that voted to move them up. But yeah, I can play both sides of it, but I know personally I would say leave it as is, move them down.
Okay, some rapid fire before we get out of here on a Friday, a fun SKFL Friday. All right, who's your early SKFL pick for 2021? Will AJ repeat? Will Ian get back on that horse? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at some keeper stuff just, last week. So I've got some stuff highlighted. Every year you always put Ian up there. It's the Mahomes factor really by himself. McCaffrey's a question mark. So, but I mean, I was looking at a startup league draft the other day, and it was a double quarterback super flex. Like the first 3 picks were Mahomes, McCaffrey, and Lamar Jackson. To that extent, I think Lamar might have been like 5 or something like that. But I mean, in a new like Ian's essentially got 3 of the 5 or 6 best guys if McCaffrey comes back to be McCaffrey. Even Lamar Jackson with some of his issues last year, he's still a top 5, 6 quarterback at worst. So I think Ian's still the favorite. I do really like AJ when he's got options, he's got value. I really like AJ. And my sleeper's Blake. I mean, Blake made that late run last year, but I would have him as my, dark horse if I was betting and getting some odds. Herbert, we'll see if Herbert does what he did last year, but the Devontae Adams, the Chubb, the Herbert, Wilson gives him as good of a 4 really as anybody. I mean, if you just look at him against Ian, Herbert and Wilson can go up against those two quarterbacks. Chubb can go up against McCaffrey, and then he's got Devontae Adams. So talent for talent, and he's got, a 3-pick that Ian doesn't have. So I really like Blake as kind of a sleeper this year, just based on what he did last year. Credit the Herbert pick, credit the Chubb trade, because that's got him in position just after 1 year to really be a contender.
Okay, I don't want you to think too much. I want you to go gut instinct on this. Who wins next year's Super Bowl? Go.
Chiefs. I mean, I still would come right back with the Chiefs as the favorite. I think as long as Mahomes is there, he's the favorite in the AFC. So easy answer for me on the Chiefs if I had to. To me, the NFC gets interesting, but with a lot of these quarterback moves, we'll see. But yeah, right now, if I got to pick a winner, I'm going back with the Chiefs. I know me and you lost big money on the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I thought they had that one locked up. And I think if they were healthy, that's a different game. But I think if they played that game again a week later, the Chiefs find a way to win it. I think they were better than the Bucs. They just weren't better that day, and they just weren't ready for the defense. But yeah, I mean, Mahomes looks to be that good.
He owes me, baby. I was down 180 that day. That was the worst day of the year. Luckily, college basketball has been much nicer to me. All right, Kalenic, will he start in left field, center, or right day one for the Mariners?
Oh God, man! Right now, that's changed this week. I'm gonna say he. Let's get him up here, man. Let's see what he can do. I wanted him up here last year, to be honest. So let's do it. Bring Julio up there with him, man.
All right, 4 quick ones. Just kind of don't even try to analyze it. Just go with what your gut is. Who is the Week 1 Seahawks starter?
Wilson, I think if I was betting. The thing is I can't name who it would be if I'm not picking Wilson right now. So that's the problem. But I still think it's 51, it's somebody else. 49, it's Russell Wilson.
Okay, this is going to be a little bit tougher. Week 1 Jets starter.
I'm gonna say Watson. I think that's the trade.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's the trade that honestly makes the most sense for the Texans is that number 2 pick and some pieces and build that way.
Okay, well, I think you just answered my question to the next winner, Week 1 Houston starter.
I would say within all of that, they just roll they're not going to go quarterback at 2 this year. They would roll Darnold out there within that trade.
Okay, and it's probably the sleeper interesting one. Well, I could probably throw Carolina in here too because they're looking for a quarterback. But let's go. Yeah, Miami. Who's the Week 1 Miami starter?
It's going to be Tua unless it's Watson. I mean, to me, Miami, it's either Tua or Watson. I think Tua gets dealt if they're able to get Watson. But because I said I've got Watson to the Jets, I'll go Tua stick in there.
Okay.
Tua's interesting. I mean, Tua's a guy. I mean, I know you were really high on him. He didn't pass the eye test at all last year, but I was so high on him a year ago coming out. I mean, I thought that guy was going to be what Herbert was essentially. So I'm willing to look past last year. It was a weird year for him. He's chasing Fitzpatrick. Now he gets named starter when everybody thought it was bad time to get, so he had that pressure on him where, a lot of the media thought Fitzpatrick should still be there. But, you watched Tua and they just didn't look good with him. And so, but, he was coming off 8-9 months of a major injury. So how much of that is, part of it? I'm very interested. If the Seahawks got Tua back in some sort of deal for Russell Wilson, I'd be fine with it. I really would.
Yeah, I think that might have been a long-term injury. It wasn't just a short-term 1-year deal. All right, Casey. Well, that'll be it for today. We've got some good stuff coming up. We're going to do kind of like a rank the rookies coming in draft pod. We'll probably loop in AJ. I know Wade, easy for me to say. Wade watches a lot of college football too, so it may be a good one to jump him in. We'll do some commish pods. We'll do all kinds of fun stuff, maybe one a week or one every other week as we lead up to the SKFL draft coming up here in 6 months, 5 months?
I think it might be 6 months from the day, to be honest. I mean, August 26th, that always feels like about the day we draft. So if it's not 6 months on the day, it's give or take a week for sure. So no, free agency next week's always a big time in NFL. So I know we'll get some free agency stuff. I know draft right around the corner. We'll do some stuff. I wouldn't mind kind of just looking through some potential keepers on some rosters, talking about them, kind of like what you said with the favorites, but kind of just saying who needs help. I've been looking at some things right now with some of the movement that has already happened. It's going to be wild. NFL just never really sleeps. I kind of just try and figure out when the quiet time of the NFL season is, and there really isn't one. So
God, I need it. Give me more NFL. All right, Casey. Well, thank Angel for her guest appearance. She's welcome to come back anytime. Enjoy your weekend. Have fun with the kiddos, and we will be talking soon.
Sounds good, Rob. Good to see you, man. Happy weekend.
Later.